Eastward, a game 6 years in the making that was released to some fairly favorable reception. The game is defined by its protagonist, its stories, and its many other aspects. But does this game stand out, or is it a hidden treasure among the sea of indies that currently exist? And most of all, is it consistent with everything that it tries to do? I may not have all the answers, but I'm open to talking about the ideas at hand. Join us now as we talk about Eastward on the newest episode of the Pause and Effect cast. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Pause and Effect cast. It has been a very long time since there's been an episode, and I'm back on my nonsense to have some fun with things. I'm your host, CJ, and joining me this episode is my good friend, Tony W. Welcome back to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Today we're talking about Eastward, correct?
So yeah, the subject of this episode is Eastward, an indie action RPG released in 2021, developed by Pixpill and published by Chucklefish Games. This game is available to play on Switch, Xbox, and both Windows and Mac OS through Steam, so you're not exactly strapped for options if you want to try it. So to start things out, this game had a very niche following, but sort of popular within indie circles. So how did you hear about the game?
I think like the big thing that made me hear about the game. Well, I often learn about games through social media, especially indie games. And what caught my eye about Eastward when I first saw footage of it was the pixel art. I'm a pixel artist by trade, and like the art in this game is absolutely fantastic. Just like high level pixel artwork on display here. Great styling, great like animations, all around great stuff. And I was also to see how the gameplay was, which I'm sure we'll get to my opinion on that as we go along.
Yeah, you definitely had a better experience finding out about it than I did. I think the way I found out about it, funnily enough, was there was a Nintendo Indie Direct in 2021, a couple months before the game came out. And I hadn't watched it at the time, but my friend was like texting me like mad, telling me about he saw this game in that direct called Eastward, and he said it looked super good. So I checked out the trailer from it, and I'm like, oh wow, this looks amazing.
Oh yeah, like visually, it's just stunning right off the bat.
Yeah, I got drawn in by the pixel art style the same way you did. So the thing that I'm wondering now is like, so if the pixel art style was what drew us in, then what kept you invested all the way to the end?
Well, honestly, I think that kind of brings me to like some of the harsher realities of my opinion on the game, I guess, is that while I did enjoy it a lot, it was definitely a mixed bag for me throughout in that it has its pacing problems. It likes its cutscenes just a bit, just a tad bit much, and it'll often sacrifice its pacing just to have more moments with the characters and and such, which is nice and all, but I think in the end though, what did keep me going was that the gameplay, when it did happen, when it wasn't like on those parts where the pacing was kind of off and slow. When it wasn't on those parts, it was legitimately like engaging gameplay. It was felt nice. The combat felt nice. Puzzles were not mind blowing, but clever enough to be interesting and like all the way through. And that's what kept me going during the first half. But during the second half, I'd say at that point they actually did succeed in getting me invested in the plot and wanting to know what's going to happen to these characters, what exactly is going on with like this world and what threatens it and such. But yeah, how about you?
For me, it was definitely the gameplay that kept me invested because if the pixel art immediately reminded me of like a more upresed and modernized Earthbound and Mother 3, then the gameplay more heavily reminded of like 2D isometric Zeldas like A Link to the Past, The Minish Cap, Oracle of Ages and Seasons, A Link Between Worlds. And even though it was a little bit more simplistic than that, a la Breath of the Wild, where all you have really is like your frying pan, aka your sword and bombs, and then you have Sam, who is coming at things with NES style telekinetic powers. Just the different ways that you could go through the levels was a lot of fun, and just the puzzles that you could do. It really reminded me of some of the puzzle design for the dungeons in Golden Sun.
Well, that's a game I still have yet to play, but
That is available on Switch now if you want to try it.
all right, I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, I do agree with you though that the story more goes through its paces in the very beginning just to try to introduce you to the world, and then the second half of the game is where the plot hooks really try to come in. But I don't know. I feel like we have differentiating opinions there because I actually enjoyed the focus on John and Sam and their adventures through new places in the first half of the game, and then by the time the plot came in to try to hook the audience, who spent at least I don't know 8 to 10 hours before they got to what's it called? Wall City?
Oh, what, Esther City? Or
No,
New Dam City.
New Dam City. Yeah, I'm thinking of why am I thinking of Wall Market? Isn't that from like a different game? It doesn't matter. But by the time we get there and we start seeing like the semblance of a plot unfolding, like I just start to get a little more annoyed than most because I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is kind of boring in a way. But I think it's because the biggest gripe that I have with the game, and the biggest gripe that I think anybody has with the game, is that the New Dam City section is too long.
I mean, arguably so. I'm not entirely sure if I agree with that. The whole shenanigans with the cooking bet, that was definitely too long.
I agree with
I'll
you.
give you that. It just a lot of it wasn't interesting to play, and it was just not like all that interesting a plot line for the character. I do. I mean, I will admit I do like Sam's interactions with the basically mob leader there, the mob boss Lee, uh, because just this absolute innocence, like contrasted against this corrupted official, well, not official, but like a criminal leader. It made for some interesting like little plot moment, like interactions, plot moments, dialogue, all that. But like, I'm not sure if I'd say New Dam City as a whole went on too long because like I did want to get attached to some characters, and I think that it was important to be attached to some characters, particularly Alva, since she uh well, I'm not gonna I feel like I shouldn't spoil, but
That's fair.
we know what happens with that character, and makes later moments make a bit more sense plot wise to just if you spend more time with those characters and doing things. It's just that I kind of wish the things they had us doing were a little bit more exciting, at least with that whole cooking bet.
Yeah, I will say I you did kind of hit on something very interesting because where I think Eastward falls flat is trying to get you to care about other characters that aren't John, Sam, and possibly even Isabel and Alva. Even when you have moments where you try to generate a deeper connection with them, they kind of just end up leaving without any real rhyme or reason other than like it's time for us to move on.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. Like having an extensive cast like this, that requires some you gotta prioritize some over others. Like you remember Jasper? I mean I remember him. I don't much care didn't much care for him at any point during this whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And in fact, I wish he put on pants, but that's that's a whole other conversation.
Straight up.
But and like then there were, if you remember the characters in Esther City, the I forget what they called themselves, but basically the group that helps you out in Esther City.
It's like that group of old men that end up kind of parodying Power Rangers, right? Sort of.
Yeah, kinda. And they like I didn't feel much of an emotional connection to the I don't know why they were so invested in John and Sam and their goals and aims here, because that wasn't ever 100% made clear. That's like another thing about having a plot with a lot of like mysterious elements that you reveal over time, is that like it can leave certain characters like their motivations to be confusing and such. That was definitely the case with like Solomon and such, who, while entertaining for a bit of his eccentricity, like other than that, he was just I didn't exactly understand where he was coming from or why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, same goes with the main antagonist, Mother. But like I know we're talking a lot of crap on the game right now, but is like, do you want to like switch the subject to anything positive? Do you have any more positive questions to talk
Yeah,
about?
yeah, I do. I personally would say like I wouldn't so much as call this negative talk or shit talk. I would just call it maybe constructive criticism in the slightest sense because even despite our gripes with the story and our gripes with not really having any form of emotional connection to the characters outside of John and Sam, the game itself is still really fun to play. I would absolutely put it
Oh
in the
yeah.
pantheon of like top 5 indies I've ever played, which I think needs updating now that I've done a whole bunch of other indie games on stream.
I actually wouldn't put it nearly that high up for me. I've played quite a few indies. Although maybe we have certain differences in taste. I have Pizza Tower in my top five there.
So do I.
Yeah. But I still think like there is a really fun game in here, like between like puzzles where you have to use both Sam and John at the same to solve it, like like the puzzles in Banjo Tooie where you split up Banjo and Kazooie,
Yeah.
or in Luigi's Mansion 3 with Gooigi. Like those, the puzzles they do with that are actually really fun. And one part that I was kind of talking shit about while I was playing, but you know what, in retrospect, it was a fun part of the game, is those like timed sections in the Tower of
Yeah,
Eternity. Uh,
I
if
do.
you remember those. And like, yes, they could be a bit like frustrating and like the time, but they were very interesting and used like the mechanics the game had built in interesting ways. And really, you know, you said there you compare to old Zelda games, like the 2D Zelda games. But when I look at this game, like the only comparisons I really see is the combat and the bombs. But other than that, the game that feels like it has its own identity in ways. There's the cooking mechanic and the fact that it doesn't really give you hearts like as drops. You have if you want to survive well, you're gonna have to
Oh yeah.
cook and be prepared. And well, I couldn't get enough into the cooking to get every recipe. I got about as much as I could figure out. I guess that's another thing that the game doesn't really explain the cooking that well, like what
Yeah, it
causes
really
what.
doesn't.
But
But at the same time, it doesn't actively punish you for not doing cooking, which is perfectly fine by me.
well, I mean, yeah, with for at least for not experimenting, you need to have
Yeah.
resources on you if you want to heal, though.
Yeah, I agree.
And I tried to make sure I had like a full pack at any moment. So,
Yeah, the thing I always did whenever I was trying to cook, the first time I played it, and even the one time I tried playing it on stream a year ago, which nobody watched, that's mostly a joke. But I just kept making like Breaking Bad jokes the whole time. Every time I had John cook something, I just yelled out, Jesse, we need to cook.
well, I mean, that also kind of brings up another point in my head, and that the game is so charming and creative all the way through. Like, I don't want to spoil chapter six, but chapter six was something else, and not to mention like certain like fun ideas, like you're cooking with the same thing you're using to beat up monsters, which is just like a cleverly fun idea, at least in my eye. And just some of the scenarios, and the game has its fair share of even mini games, which none of them really hit that far home with me, but like I was still a nice like sense of variety and like more activities in this world, making the world feel a bit more alive.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, I feel like that's the end of that line of thought. Any other questions?
I was just gonna say too that like going off of the mini games thing that you mentioned was like the mini games, even if you get super invested in them or you don't, they're still super fun to play and they're still super nice to have. Like even if you don't so much as touch the first side game that they introduced to you, which is Earthborn, and they give you plenty of opportunities to play it throughout the game. But even if you do or don't play it, it's still a really nice thing to have, and it's still a super clever game within a game style homage to Dragon Quest, all things considered.
I mean, yeah, I really, truth be told, I didn't play Earthborn more than like 10 minutes.
Oh, me neither.
Like, it's a nice piece of the world, and it's connected to Sam because like all the kids in this world like are obsessed with this video game, which probably says a lot about how the creators of the game feel about like their relationship with the game, like Dragon Quest. Is that it was something that like that was communal, and that kids would like talk about strategies and how to get through it and stuff like that. And that kind of comes from a sincere place, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of influence to be taken from Dragon Quest than most people, like more than people realize. Like, for example, like the way that the games Yakuza Like a Dragon and its sequel Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, the reason those games play the way that they are is because, or the way that they do, sorry, is because both the main character and the team are that made it are just massive fans of Dragon Quest.
Rest in peace, Toriyama.
Yeah, rest in peace, Akira Toriyama.
Yeah.
Even if Dragon Quest games aren't the most popular worldwide outside of Japan, like the influence is still there in just about everything you see. Without Dragon Quest, there wouldn't even be games like Final Fantasy, all things considered.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the case with many massive influences. And it's it's wild to think, like you immediately, not to go too long on a tangent about Toriyama, but like you immediately think of like his work on Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z when it comes to his cultural impact. But like when you think of it that way, that's a massive impact in like another area that like people just don't immediately acknowledge as much because a Dragon Ball is what he was most known for.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Okay, so then out of every positive and negative aspect that we talked about with Eastward, what aspect did you enjoy the most, and what aspect do you think needed more time in the oven?
I think I'm gonna be honest, that was a pretty good finale, like gameplay wise and just like emotionally, at least for me. Not emotionally as in I was super invested in this like the outcome, but more that like they made it feel like climactic and exciting and all that. You fought the fight with the fight before the final fight, if you know what I'm referring to without.
I think I do, and man, that fight was bullshit.
Oh, it was at least conceptually cool.
Conceptually cool, yes, but
Well,
Jesus,
I mean,
that took me so many tries.
I mean, I didn't die, but I had a lot of food. And the timing is really, really tough on that. But I kind of just, at least with my experience with the finale, it was just a very classic, like dark feeling final area, and with like the tension building up to the final boss and all that. And I don't know. I think of all the parts of the game, I actually enjoyed that the most. But if I were to take something that was more like general speaking, I think it would be the mechanic of using both John and Sam's powers, because it made combat more interesting and dynamic. Because a lot of enemies do require you to stun them with Sam if you want to like avoid taking any damage. And just yeah, mainly like that dynamic, especially when it comes to puzzles and such. Actually, wait. Least favorite part, or part that could use more time in the oven. I really think the story could have used, just in general, could have used time in the oven to simplify and clarify. Because, like we said before, too many characters that we didn't really care about. And, like, I was I'm still confused on exactly what was going on the villains side of things, and like what their aims were, what their origins were. And I really couldn't get into that part of it as much. So like I feel if they took the time to just like cut out some of the story fluff and also be a little less cryptic with certain plot points, then I feel like it would be a much better game.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with everything that you just said. Favorite aspect for me was the gameplay and the ability to switch between John and Sam just to go through everything. And then least favorite, or like more time in the oven, like you said, was the story. I think the pacing of the game was fine, but if you had like less filler in certain parts and more things or more extraneous locations that could actively explain things a little better, like we I don't think needed that filler episode in New Dam City where you're trying to cook for a mafia boss.
Yeah.
And even though it gave us our second instance of Solomon, we did not need Monk Hollywood as a location. I'm sorry.
I mean, yes, you're right that we don't need it, but I kind of still want that location.
That's fair.
I would like maybe just make it explain a bit more of the plot. Like, I mean, it's such a fun location, mainly because of how ridiculous it is. But like the main issue with like certain those areas, those parts you're talking about, is that they're filler, that they don't really like explain all as much as they should. I mean, towards the end of Monk Hollywood, there's some a little bit. There are some crumbs of motivation for the villain, for Solomon, and
that's about all we get. I still don't understand his relationship to Mother. I still don't understand why we see him the way we do in our three encounters with
Yeah,
him.
and he doesn't actually explain anything before he officially kicks the bucket in Esther City.
Yeah, it's just you have to strike a balance between mystery and like engagement, and if you don't explain, I guess that's a thing, like a tough balance because you give away too much of the mystery, then I'm not curious. I know how this is going, but if you give not enough, like in this game, like is there anything to be gleaned from this mystery or anything like that? And to an extent, the game fails to deliver on that.
Yeah, even though I love Eastward, it is one of the games where even after completing it, I still have more answers than I have questions, and those questions did not receive answers.
Yeah, you get answers for things you don't want the answers for.
Yeah,
You don't really care about the answers for.
I mean, hell, considering the ending of the game, which I'm not going to say anything towards it,
Oh yeah,
but
it leaves on a question, doesn't it?
yeah, if there was going to be a sequel to this game, which based on how the ending went, it seems increasingly likely that that could happen. But
Did you not hear about Octopia?
yeah, I was gonna bring that up actually. So yeah, and I found out recently because I thought to myself, oh, the DLC for this is probably going to cost quite a bit. No, Octopia is only like 5.99 no matter what platform you got it on.
You know what? That might not be bad. A bad a price.
So you haven't played it and I haven't played it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so neither of us have anything really to say about it. But the marketing that I saw for it, it added like Stardew Valley style farming and Animal Crossing style like town building, world building, etc. And even I guess the marketing that I saw, it's treated more like an alternate campaign with new events than a side mode.
An alternate campaign with new events. I mean, oh yes, like an alternate timeline.
Yeah, because they even show in the trailer, they show like other characters from all the other places. Like we see Jasper, I think we see some of the Greenwood residents, Isabel and Alva, and like up just other characters from other places coming to this town.
They were like, yeah, we're sorry that all these characters had a pretty sad existence in the game, or at least like sad things happen to these characters in the main game. Let's give an alternate timeline where things are just happy.
Yeah, although realistically, I think if there's going to be a sequel or a spin-off to Eastward, it probably more than likely is going to focus on Daniel, the robot Daniel, and their deadbeat dad that just constantly goes on adventures with you for no real rhyme or reason.
I mean, that would actually make sense. That, like, okay, there were only like, I can say only like six characters in the game that I was truly invested with. That was John, Sam, Isabel, Alva, and William and Daniel, and all that.
Yeah,
Because I mean, of all the characters, we knew them the longest. We spent the longest amount of time with those characters, so they were developed enough. Although I would say I feel like maybe even William and Daniel should have had more time in the oven.
I agree with you.
But although I'm still pissed at William for like what he did during the cooking quest. If you,
Yeah,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So
yeah. Here's a really dumb idea that maybe if Pixpill and Chucklefish are listening, maybe it could happen, but we already have Eastward with John and Sam. So then Eastward sequel with William and Daniel, Eastward prequel with Alva and Isabel.
I was thinking you were about to say like sequel called Westward or something, but
or Weastward, but I don't know.
Weastward?
But no, like I could see either of those really working because those are characters that the first game established enough for you to want to care about them and want to know more about them. And like in both cases, like you could keep up the dual character mechanics. Although like you'd have to consider how they'd be different for each character, but still. Yeah, I think that ends that line of thought.
And realistically, that's all the time we have. But before we close out, do you have anything you want to plug or shout out before we finish up?
I don't know. I'm working on a game that's gonna take like probably a couple of years, and that I'm aiming to have you as like co-composer with another friend of mine.
You and I have definitely talked about that because, spoiler alert for those that didn't know, Tony W himself created a mobile game called Dribble, and I did the music for that game all the way back in like
2018.
yeah, 2018, and I composed everything in like 2016, 2017, right? That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I made a lot of art for that game. The thing is, we were pretty inconsistent on like development schedule at the time. I'm trying to be more consistent, like get at least a little bit of work done each day on Dribble, even if it's just a tiny bit on the sequel. But like with Dribble, the first Dribble, like I got a lot of my art done, a lot of art for that done when I was in college, which was like around 2014, 2015.
Yeah, I remember that because you and I both finished our undergrad around the same time.
Yeah, and because of like a lot of that, there's a lot of art that I look back on Dribble One and I'm like, it's already at that point. Like I remember being proud of Dribble One when it released, and then like now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh man, I could have done so much. But which is half of the motivation behind Dribble Two is to make a much more polished dribble experience now that I have more experience with this type of game. And
Yeah, that's the quintessential artist line of thought, isn't it? It's like you put out something, you're proud of it, and then some time passes and you're like, I could have done so much better on this.
yeah, and
I feel the same way about all my music.
oh, I mean, I love your like one thing, for example, is that with Dribble One, and one thing I do want to improve with Dribble Two. Like, I do like, I really like the score that you gave Dribble One. But at the same time, I feel like there could be like perhaps a bit more focus on the type of music in Dribble Two, which is why I like focus on direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Like
do.
we all are heading in the same direction because with Dribble One, I was like, here's what the area is like. Give me your best interpretation of that. And you put out some good pieces, but I guess I was thinking stuff that was going to be more like old school Grant Kirkhope with a lot of it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm that good.
Well, I mean, I think there are like takeaways from Grant Kirkhope like music, or like from certain like platformer game music that I want to kind of like discuss with you and the other composer and see if we can like make sure to get those aspects into the music that is made for Dribble 2.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, this kind of went off topic. We were kind of just closing out the stream. But yeah, Dribble is a game I made. You can find it for free on the App Store and on Google Play. And I'm making a sequel, so keep an eye out for that next decade. So, yeah. It's been nice talking about this game with you, especially with it fresh on my mind from a
Yeah,
recent
dude, thank
playthrough.
you for being here.
All right. You're absolutely welcome, and thank you for having me. So I guess that closes things out.
Yes, and that's our show. Thank you everyone so much for listening. Please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing the podcast around. And please stay tuned for the next episode. Everybody take care and have a great rest of your day. See ya.